All right, folks, let's get to it.
All false religions are rooted in self-righteousness. The Hebrew Israelites, who are made righteous by ethnicity and by keeping the law.
Yeah.
And that is because grace is a divine idea. What makes
All right, let's stop right there. Okay. So she starts off saying all false religions are rooted in self-righteousness. Right away, this is what we would call a hasty generalization. It's a logical fallacy, it's an inductive fallacy, and it has to do with coming to conclusions far too hastily. I would say another key feature of what she's going to talk about here is the no true Scotsman's fallacy, where you have, it's basically you point out an exception to whatever rules she's establishing here, and she will say, well, that's not real Christianity or whatever. For instance, her concept of foreign righteousness being an idea, a divine idea, right? Her concept of that being a divine idea, for one, right? Innovation requires no divine input. I mean, we innovate things all the time. That's how things move forward. That's how religion evolves, is new elements get added to it. So to point to a new or a unique feature within any particular religion and say this points to its divine origin is to say nothing, because that's the history of religions, is coming up with new. Otherwise, you don't have a different religion. If religions don't have key features that are unique, then they wouldn't be distinguishable from other religions. So so that I can clarify this really fast, let's just say that it starts off with a no true Scotsman fallacy. The no true Scotsman here is to say that this doctrine that she has of this foreign righteousness, this justification, is something that is, well, for one, she's saying that her Christianity is the Christianity, which is basically what every group of Christians say, but they don't all agree, right? There's a reason why Luther nailed his thesis on the church doors, right? He didn't agree with them on matters concerning justification, but both groups considered themselves to be Christian. So she's applying the no true Scotsman fallacy right off the bat, right?
sense that religions that were born from the devil and not from the Lord would actually be bent in the direction of trying to obtain salvation apart from Christ. Like grace.
Now here you go. That's the inductive fallacy. You know, she's hastily generalizing here and saying that she has not provided you with apt or appropriate evidence to make those statements. And you'll find that if you begin there, and somebody might say this is a genetic fallacy, but that because what I'm getting ready to say is that if you start from that premise, it's pretty hard. Well, I'm not making a concrete argument here. I'm saying it's pretty hard to follow that up with sound logic, but we'll get back to that in a moment. I think I just rushed in with my my intro, and I think what would be appropriate here is to encourage you guys, to encourage you right now to subscribe, perhaps to like the video, to share it. This is the Revival Hour, anywhere I'm at, and this is the Apostle J-Wit. I have been sent to bind up, come on here, the brokenhearted. I've been sent to preach liberty to those who are in prison, who are in the prison of religion, right? So like, subscribe, and share. All right. Now, back to the video.
All false religions.
Let's get on here. She says,
Would make sense that religions that were born.
I like this thing here.
Is because grace is a divine idea.
So she says grace is a divine idea. Well, if it is a divine idea, it's pretty bad, I'd say. Let's do a little analysis of grace in light of the current headlines. As many of you know, Diddy has been locked up. He's as part of He's under scrutiny, and he has federal charges. Basically, a RICO has. We did a whole episode on Ichabod on. We put God in a RICO trial, right? But what's going on? We have a RICO case with with Diddy, where Diddy is saying they're saying that Diddy has engaged in sex trafficking, imprisonment. He's imprisoned people against their will, forced imprisonment. Um, these accusations are quite serious, and he's in jail, and he's just been denied, if I'm not mistaken, $50 million bail appeal. He petitioned to put $50 million bail up, and it was denied. And the idea is that he's going to have to pay for his crimes. Now, I'm going to do just a really quick popcorn analysis of our understanding of what they are trying to present us with here as grace. If a person, a civilian, another civilian here, could let's say someone travels to New York, for instance, and decides that they're going to offer themselves up in Diddy's stead. Would that be, while it might be considered gracious to Diddy to make such an offer, to be the proxy for Diddy, would that be justice? And the idea with penal substitutionary atonement is that he's both the just and the justifier of those who have faith. Now, while you might say that he lets a person off the hook, could you say that's justice? Would the public accept that scheme? Would the public accept a person with a spotless record and enough youth to pay for his crime doubly? In other words, young enough where they could say, for instance, you got a 10-year-old who came up and said, all right, I will offer myself up instead of Diddy. Would we consider that to be justice, that the 10-year-old does the time for Diddy and Diddy gets to walk? Would that be justice? While it might be gracious, will we say that's justice? I mean, I don't know. You can say that's a divine idea, but is it a good idea, right?
Makes sense that religions that were born from the devil and not from the Lord would actually be bent in the direction of trying to obtain salvation apart from Christ. Like grace, we don't come.
Well, clearly religions that don't have a Christ figure would have a scheme for soteriology that doesn't involve, I mean, that's if they even have this whole idea of being saved. If they do have that, it wouldn't involve a Christ figure if the Christ figure doesn't feature in their religion. This is a non-statement.
With stuff like that because we're arrogant. And the reason we don't come up with stuff like that is because we want to
hasty generalizations. We're arrogant. Speak for yourself, man. I mean, you're not providing, and this is the problem with proselytizing via TikTok or whatever. You don't have enough time to set up a proper premise for any of these bold assertions, which are false.
About ourselves. But the way the gospel is set up, God has removed every avenue of boasting by giving us grace.
Yeah.
When you get to glory, all you can say is you did it.
Even when I used to do street evangelism videos and I used to talk to atheists, like I had to consistently remind myself, I thought that I could be righteous on my own. The atheist's biggest problem is they are offended that you're saying that I cannot be righteous without this invisible God. If we're honest, as Christians, we move like that all the time.
Let's take that back, what he says right there. Go back here. Let's see.
That you're saying that I cannot be righteous without. And I used to talk to atheists, like I have to consistently remind myself.
I'm reminded when we look on social media and, you see like the gender wars, particularly when Black women, they're like, how did I get pulled into this conversation? We're just atheists here are just catching strays. Like, what are you talking about, sir? Like, you're just pulling. I'm reminded when I was doing evangelism. All right, so we're going to check out his claims about atheism and see if they're.
Like I have to consistently remind myself. I thought
here you go.
The glory, all you can say is you did it.
Even when I used to do street evangelism videos and I used to talk to atheists, like I had to consistently remind myself, I thought that I could be righteous on my own. The atheist's biggest problem is they are offended that you're saying that I cannot be righteous without this invisible God. If we're honest,
is that our biggest problem? Is that the atheist's biggest problem? Are they offended that they can't be righteous without an invisible God? Or are they more offended by the idea that the invisible God that you're presenting them with doesn't seem to be at all a real thing? That's the question. Is the biggest problem. So, again, when you see that kind of presentation of your view, which is what we would call a straw man, this is not consistent with what and this is too hasty of a generalization. We don't know that all atheists have this particular problem at the forefront of their worldview. Like that's the problem they have with your evangelism. Plenty of atheists have other problems that might be the chief thing that causes them to be atheists. Maybe it's the problem of evil. Maybe it's the inconsistency of the Bible's testimony about the creation of the world with what we know from science. Maybe it's the misogyny, the inherent misogyny in the Deuteronomic code. Maybe it could be any number of things. But he goes to the thing that's going to help make for a quick soundbite and say that the biggest problem we have with this right. See, we have to accept your definition of righteousness and so forth to even begin that conversation. And perhaps they don't even accept your definition. Perhaps they don't even know that what you consider to be righteousness is a thing at all. I mean, this is a non-argument. This is just people, this is propaganda. This is what this is. This is someone just presenting you with their propaganda.
That you're saying that I cannot be righteous without this invisible God. If we're honest, as Christians, we move like that all the time. We move like we can do things apart from God. We love and we serve God with our mouths, but a lot of times our heart moves like an atheist. We move like we don't really need God like that. And so we all struggle with it. Well, it helps us stop.
So he does his redefinition of what is at the heart of atheism. And then he uses that to try to preach to Christians and say, don't move like an atheist. This is ridiculous. Atheists don't have, our chief problem isn't your scheme of soteriology, at least not mine. My chief problem with your religion is its internal incoherence, its obvious generation from the minds or emanation from the minds of human beings. The fact that it is obviously the emanation of human minds and not, as Jackie said earlier, clearly the idea that comes from a divine being. I think that quite the opposite is proven when we look at virginity cloths and we look at Earths being born out of nothing before a sun is born, right? Before a star is born, you have the Earth, right? So when we look at things like that, and we look at the lack of consistency of the testimony about the origin of human origins with what we can see through DNA and science about the evolution of human beings and our shared DNA with other species on this planet, those are things that are chief in terms of our problem with your presentation of Christianity. Is that whatever religion and whatever God or God's people might say they believe in, Christianity is uniquely unsuitable for human beings as a belief about our origins and our destiny. Whatever your beliefs are, this is a uniquely moronic scheme to try to preach. Now, whereas it may have worked in the first century, we might, Paul says in Acts 17 that in the past God winked at the faults that humanity had. We wink at what went on in the first century. It probably we could maybe understand some of the ignorance, but for us to still be beholden to the same doctrines that they were beholden to 2,000 years ago, with all of the advances that we've made in science and all kinds of other things, just learning about religions in that surrounded area, learning more about the origins of the Hebrew or Judaistic religion, learning about those things and how many things it shares in common with people in the area of Canaan. We would be really foolish to continue to hold to this religion with the same sort of steadfastness that they did in the first century. So for him to say that, to boil it down to a simple issue of us wanting to be right, at the heart of their argument is the idea of arrogance and pride. The idea is that to think that you're a good person or that you're righteous is a prideful and an arrogant thing, and that their version of Christianity comes along to more or less quash that or to dispel or expel that kind of thought. And that is offensive to human pride, and that's the chief problem. No, It's really not for me. The chief problems with it are textual. I didn't leave Christianity because, in fact, this scheme I thought was I thought I got a good deal. Hey, I get to be the sinner. God gets to be the one who forgives, right? Felt like a good idea. Felt like a good scheme. It felt like a deal. I'll take that bargain. That's how it's sold. That's how evangelism is sold to people. That's how proselytization happens. It happens through selling that deal. It's not that offensive to human sensibility. What is offensive to me is when I started to read and study and get through the text, realizing that, contrary to what I came to believe initially, there were plenty of inconsistencies in the text. And not only were there plenty of inconsistencies, there were plenty of things that just I could not get to match up with what I consider to be a fair and just God by his own standards. It's important to say that because some people will say, well, you're judging him by external. No, if I took his own standards, for instance, in the Exodus, you're presented with a Pharaoh who's a monster. And how is he described or as a monster? Well, he's engaging in infanticide right from the door. They're already appealing to your natural understanding that babies, whatever they are, they probably aren't worthy of being murdered because of some evil ruler, right? So we are introduced to him. He's killing Hebrew babies, right? Killing Hebrew babies. And then as we move into the book of Joshua, what is going on? The Israelites or the people of Israel are killing the babies of people, the inhabitants of Canaan. But by that time, they've already showed you the Israelites as the good guys. So many people don't stop to think, isn't it a little odd that before we even get to know who Pharaoh is, we are to think he's a monster because he's killing babies. But by the time we get to Joshua, the Israelites are killing babies and we are fine with it because it's a divine command theory or a divine edict, right? I better let him finish up and get out of this episode. This is supposed to be a quick one.
We love when we serve God with our mouths, but a lot of times our heart moves like an atheist. We move like we don't really need God like that. And so we all struggle with it. What helps us stop being, self-righteous is a holy and a righteous God coming into our lives and showing us grace, showing us love, showing us mercy, showing that we cannot be righteous on our own, but he was righteous on our behalf. And when we accept him, we're made righteous.
Yeah. Nonsense. Have a good day, folks, and just realize you don't have to believe things. Just analyze what people are saying on the basis of what they're saying. Judge them. If a person is going to make hasty generalizations, basically an inductive fallacy, if they're going to make no true Scotsman, which is that's what's going on here. Not every version of Christianity believes in their particular doctrine of justification by faith alone. And you needn't go any further than Pelagius. There were plenty of people in the earlier church who didn't hold to certain doctrines that they hold to. So what they have is no true. They're starting from the door with a no true Scotsman, and then they're saying that this is a divine idea. Clearly it's a divine idea because it differs from other ones, and and again, that's just faulty reasoning. Clearly, you can have new ideas and innovation. That's what it means to be a human being, is to live among other creatures that are constantly innovating. That's the reason why I'm able to speak to you right now under a shroud of darkness over the internet. All right. Have a good day, folks, and I'll see you soon.